Hi everyone, thank you for listening today. And just before the podcast begins, we wanted to let you know that if you are looking for an idea for your next team away day or off-site session, we have an idea for you. We have interviewed more than 200 of the world's great sports coaches. They are men and women who have won multiple Olympic medals and championships on the national or world stage. And we create bespoke presentations and tailored workshops for you using video and audio from these interviews to address the challenges that your organisation or team is facing. We like to think that our material is authentic, inspiring and challenging. If you'd like to know more, our contact details are in the show.
Have you ever been stuck on a weight loss plateau, trying everything and anything you can to lose that extra weight and reach peak health? We've all been there, but Noom's unlocked the secret to reaching the mountaintop. Go in micro. The Noom GLP-1 microdose program starts at $99 and is delivered to your door in 7 days. Start your microdose GLP-1 journey today at Noom.com. That's Noom.com. Noom. Micro changes, big results. Noom GLP-1 RX program involves healthy diet, exercise, and support. Individual results may vary. Meds and personalization based on clinical need. Not reviewed by FDA for safety, efficacy, or quality. No affiliation with Novo Nordisk Inc., the only U.S. source of FDA-approved semaglutide. Not available in all 50 U.S. states.
Unlock the savings at Boost Mobile and save up to $600 a year. I've been scouting these big carriers for a minute now, and I've seen them pull the same play 1,000 times. They promise you the world, then hit you with a price hike right when the game gets tight. But Boost Mobile, their $25 a month unlimited wireless plan is the most consistent player on the floor. No contracts and no price hikes. Unlock the savings today at boostmobile.com/unlock. Based on average annual single line payment of AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile customers compared to 12 months of the Boost Mobile unlimited wireless plan as of January 2026. For full offer details, visit boostmobile.com.
Instagram teen accounts default teens into automatic protections for who can contact them and the content they can see. Explore teen accounts and all of our ongoing work to protect teens online at instagram.com/teen accounts.
Notes. Welcome to the Lessons from the Great Coaches podcast.
I've learned that you don't do it alone.
You learn so many different things from so many different coaches.
That's an elite learning environment.
Failure is not a problem. How you deal with it is a problem.
How to be resilient.
How important it is to infuse joy in the process of learning.
To be a good coach, you've got to give more than you take.
What an interesting life it is to be a leader.
Hello and welcome to the Great Coaches podcast. My name is Paul Barnett, and here on the podcast, we believe that there is no algorithm for leadership. And so we interview great sports coaches from around the world to try and find one or two ideas to help us all be better leaders. We chose sports coaches because we believe they possess the leadership skills that make a long-term impact on people's lives. Back in 2023, I interviewed the rugby union coach Duncan McKellar. Duncan had just signed a contract to move from Australia and coach in England. And there was a mix of excitement and nervousness on his mind that I think came through in the interview. I was living in Romania then, and it was a tough time for us as a family. The Ukrainian war had started on the border, and there was still the lingering impact of COVID restrictions, hampering us as a family. Duncan said something interesting in that interview that resonated with me very strongly, and here it is.
I think over the last couple of years, I've learned that the other thing that needs to be added into that is balance, is life balance, and looking after yourself and remembering what's important. As I said, you're not going to go too far as a coach if you don't love what you're doing. And when you love to do something, it's easy to consume yourself with it and do it 24/7. But are you focusing on what's most important, your family? Are you getting to your daughter's primary school graduation? Are you going to watch her play a touch footy or a netball game that's really important to her? And are you taking the wife out for dinner? Listening to her experiences from her work life and making sure that you've got that balance, because at the end of the day, they're the most important people to you. And I think that balance helps re-energize you And when you walk back in the door the following day or the following morning, as a group and as a coaching group, you're much more re-energized, much more refreshed. And the players feel that. If you're tired, dragging yourself around the building, that'll sap energy from the players and certainly rub off on them instead of it being the other way where you should be an energy provider.
Today's episode is on the topic of burnout and builds on what Duncan talks about in that quote. And I'm joined for the discussion by two esteemed people. The first is Dr Gavin Weeks. Gavin has been on the podcast a few times before. He is a doctor of psychology and an associate fellow at Oxford Sayyid Business School. During the day, he's also the director of innovation and development at the consultancy Thompson Harrison. And I'm also joined by Dr Brendan Meaney. Brendan's also been on the podcast before, and he's a certified mental performance consultant. And his work focuses on implementing high-performance skills to optimise potential in both the sport and corporate space. He's also the Chief Performance Officer at livefirstai.com, where he applies sports psychology principles that manage burnout and elevate functioning. And Brendan is also a survivor of tongue cancer. And so now, please enjoy our discussion on burnout.
You're listening to the Lessons from the Great Coaches podcast.
I'm here with two esteemed doctors this morning. I have Dr. Gavin Weeks. Good morning, Gavin.
Morning, Paul. It's evening here, but good morning, Paul.
And I have, I'm not sure what time it is where you are. Good, whatever it is, to Dr. Brendan Meaney.
Afternoon in Chicago, so right around 3 o'clock.
Why don't we start there? Gavin, very quickly, where are you in the world and what you've been doing so far today?
I am in a village near Windsor in the UK, not too far away from London. I'm at the end of my work day. I had a long day of meetings and preparations and coaching, but I got out for a run, had some time with the family, and now we're back here talking to you, Paul.
Dr. Brendan, what about yourself?
I'm in Chicago. I was up at about 4 a.m. I have a month-old baby, so trying to relieve my wife. And she did a night shift last night, and I might be delirious. I don't know if I trail off, nudge me back in. But yeah, I went to work early this morning, taught yoga most of the day. So I've had a little time to relax and recover and rejuvenate. And now we're here with you, and hopefully go and do a nice relaxing evening with my family.
Thank you both for coming in to talk about burnout. It's a topic that increasingly comes up in the conversation, not only around society and people in society, but especially so with coaching. And so we thought we'd do an episode on burnout, and we're going to listen to some quotes from great coaches as we go along, and we're going to talk about how the impact of burnout and potentially what we can do to put it in abeyance, or at least try and hold it off for as long as possible, or manage it. We're going to talk about what we can do to manage the symptoms of burnout and potentially also prevent it from happening. But Gavin, maybe if I could start with you. When we talk about burnout, what is it that we're actually talking about? What's the working definition?
Paul, it's a good question, because burnout's not a clinical diagnosis like depression or panic attacks or anxiety disorders. It's what the World Health Organization calls a occupational phenomenon. Nevertheless, an occupational phenomenon that many people experience, which is comprised of three main symptoms or three main problems, and Brendan can expand too on this. The three are prolonged exhaustion, so feelings of long-standing fatigue, a loss of engagement or increasing cynicism about your work, so just feeling disengaged, feeling that perhaps that you don't want to be there or that it's not really worth it, and then reduced working effectiveness. And that doesn't necessarily mean reduced effectiveness that other people could see. They might see somebody who they think is performing really well. It's as much reduced effectiveness that you feel, that feeling that you can't quite engage, you can't quite give the best that you want to in your job.
With Gavin, when I listen to you describe those three things, the other question I have that comes to mind is it also associated with working harder or rather longer as these feelings take hold of you?
We probably not going to have a time to go over all of the research that we can access, but there are some relationships between working longer and feeling burnt out. But actually, in the academic research, it's not completely clear that's the main or indeed the only cause. In fact, you may get some people who work long hours, but actually feel that they're able to recover, feel engaged, feel they can commit in the way that they want to.
Brendan, when we look at this through an American lens, from your cultural viewpoint, is there anything that you would add to Gavin's definition of burnout?
Other than an apology for American ingenuity and drive and having a domino effect on the rest of the world, drive a lot of this phenomenon is permeating, unfortunately, around the world. But just reinforcing what Gavin said, I view this as death by 1,000 paper cuts. That you have these micro moments of either excessive workload, work inefficiency, lack of support, imbalance in work life with your family, a lack of autonomy in work and in the environment that you're working in, and even the perception of control. A lot of people with burnout feel that they're no longer in control of their day, they're no longer in control of their choices. And when I work with organizations, I use a paradigm called RADA, where I look at relationships, alignment, data that supports what we're trying to do, and then the actions. Or the inverse of that, are we disconnected? Are we disorganized? Do we have arbitrary observations, or are we avoiding things that either a company or organization needs to do? And this really just burns out, builds up over a long time, and pretty much zaps your dopamine and your willingness to do things that you once found a lot of joy in. And I think that is a good sign of people burning out, where you once really enjoyed some of the minute parts of your job or leadership or coaching, or the post-game interview no longer brings you juice and you feel as if it's almost more of a nuisance.
So what makes us more susceptible to burnout? Is there anything that we should be looking out for, either when we're supporting each other as leaders or when we're in an organization and looking at the people in the team?
What makes you susceptible? I suppose, firstly, we're talking about an experience that's really common. So depending, and a lot of the data on burnout comes from things like survey studies where people are asked that, to what extent do you feel like you either are worried about burning out or that you feel burnt out? And depending on how you ask the questions, you can get anything from about 20% of people through beyond 50% of people that would say they identify with that experience. So when you've got a group of people that's so big, you're going to have two things. You're going to have lots of individual causal factors. So in some academic research, for example, that was done in Sweden, I can send you the link for anyone who's interested. They looked at elite football coaches, and there were a subset of those coaches that were more prone to burnout than others. And they involved people who were in a single household. So probably they had family and also they were working in sport. And that included part-time coaches. So part-time coaches potentially who are trying to balance their work with other work, or they're in roles that are more precarious. So what you can see from that is you're going to have a whole lot of common factors that people experience: long working hours, all the stuff that Brendan was talking about, feeling an absence of control, feeling somewhat lonely, feeling disconnected. And then you're going to have specific things that relate either to individual circumstances or potentially people's personality traits. Some people who are more prone to feeling high stress, for example, the experience of high stress for long periods of time is another cause of burnout. So if you're somebody who reacts very strongly to stress, you're probably at greater risk of burnout. So that's just a few of many things.
Brendan, anything that you think, particularly in your context, high-performing sport over in the US, that makes people more susceptible to burnout?
Yeah, it's the pressure of winning, right? Inextricable intertwining of identity and you winning or losing, getting another job, possibly not getting rehired, the turnover of that free agency, and many of the things that we witness in American sport, but just sport around the world. And those outside pressures can really start to wear on people where the workload is starting to cloud your judgment, that you're not asking for support. You might have stress relationships that one time you leaned on, but for whatever reason, that thinking and reasoning part of your brain is no longer being accessed to lean on those resources. And it's just a very slow entropy, meaning that the overuse of energy that a lot of coaches experience. And a lot of that just comes from the pressure of the environment that we're in, where you have to win games, you have to meet the major sponsors, you have to talk to the press, you have to deal with contracts, and it's really an overwhelming thing that the coaches experience, and over time that uses more energy than they intend to show up or have every day.
I'd like to show a clip. It comes from the Australian netball coach, Jill McIntosh, and she talks about this idea of presenteeism, which you've both touched on there. But she also talks about another great coach, a lady called Joyce Brown, who noticed this tendency in her and gave us some advice. So I'd like to play the clip, and then I would like to ask you both a question.
Yes, I can remember when I first was awarded the national job in 95, and I had a little office all by myself, and because I was in Canberra and our main office, Netball Australia main office at that time, was in Sydney. And I felt that every second of that day while I was in my office, I had to be there in the office, and I couldn't go out because the phone might ring. And I just thought I had to be sitting there in case the phone might ring, because if somebody rang me and I wasn't there, they would think I wasn't doing my job. And then over time, I learned that no, in a day, I need to take time out for myself. And I can always remember Joyce saying exactly that. Coaching at the top is a lonely job, and you can't give 24/7 attention to it because you'll burn out or break down. So in every 24 hours, you need time away. And my time away used to be, I'd go for a lunchtime walk if the weather permitted.
It's a great quote, and Jill's gone on to have a fantastic career, of course, coaching internationally with the Australian team, and now she's over in Wales as well. But it's this idea of presenteeism, and she says they're needing to be on 24/7, and Joyce Brown stepping in and telling her she needed to take a break. Now, many of us don't have a coach or a mentor watching over us. We just haven't been able, many of us perhaps say we're too busy to source that type of person. But if someone wanted to self-reflect, what can they do to be more self-aware about unhelpful behaviours?
I follow the paradigm of awareness, acceptance, and actions. And understanding what are you doing, how are you feeling, how is this influencing the people like yourself, number one, and as well as the people that you're working with, and what can you do to mitigate some of those feelings or thoughts or elevate some that are more positive, and understanding things that lift your energy and re-engage you and make you feel connected to others should be doubled down and made a priority, whether that be through a checklist, whether it be through daily practices, or as a coach, setting that standard for your entire organization, that on Thursday nights that we're going to go home early and that's family night, or Saturday after games, we have all the wives and their children or spouses up to the area where we can sit down and have a meal together. I'm building in some of those guardrails that might help mitigate some of the feelings that lead to burnout, and helping you and other people prioritize that within your organization.
And Gavin, when you listen to Brendan's viewpoint, what else comes to mind for you?
I think the additional thing, and thinking about Julie's quote as well, is so much of this is about how you identify and how you think about what your role is. So I'm assuming she also played netball, and when coaches who have been athletes, which is many coaches in different sports, they would have been paying really close attention to the balance between stress and recovery, because we know you don't want to go into a game or go into championship under recovered. So you're constantly trying to get that balance of strain on the body from the physical training and the recovery that needs to happen to renew and to grow. Then when you become a coach or when you become a leader, maybe you forget that you still need that balance of strain and recovery. That you can't just be present all of the time. That even though you're not out there on the pitch training or playing, you're putting strain on the system, and that needs to be balanced by time away. And it was remarkable, really, how firstly, it took somebody else observing that behavior in her. Secondly, that once she saw it, she knew that there was a thought process behind it. If I'm not there all the time, people will think I'm not doing my job. And then thirdly, part of it, it wouldn't have been the only source of recovery, but part of the recovery was very simple. It was just going for a walk. It was just getting outside of the office.
I find this idea of recovery and mentors fascinating. I was giving a lecture the other week at one of the universities here. It was in the MBA class. And we got towards the end and I took questions. And very quickly, the topic turned to how do you sustain yourself? And I asked the group to raise their hand if they had a mentor. There was only 2 in the class, and these are people doing their MBA. I think being self-aware is one thing, but having someone in your corner who's also keeping an eye on things is absolutely fundamental. And I wonder why it isn't embraced more by, in particular, coaches, but I'm going to say leaders in general. And I think the habit of finding people to do that has to start when you're much younger, perhaps potentially when you're at school. But Gavin, I know that you do a lot of leadership work with organisations in Europe. Is this something that comes up when you're talking to some of these organisations?
Almost every time. Almost every leadership group that I work with, if you ask the question about how sustainable do people feel like their current working practices are, you might get half the group that says they think they've got the balance right. But then there'll be another half, and sometimes it's more than half, that recognize that the way I'm working now is not something that I can sustain. But, and this in a way is the dark side of some ideas like grit. If you can tolerate discomfort, you can keep on going. And you can tell yourself, we'll keep on going until the next milestone. There'll come a natural point where I can dial back and I can reset. But what I see is that for many people, that natural point doesn't really come. And I would imagine it's the same for senior leaders as it is for coaches. There's almost always more work to be done. There's almost always something else that we could be paying attention to. And that's before people think about trying to attend to other stuff outside of their life that also matters to them.
Brendan, when you think about this idea of there's almost always more work to be done, how have the best leaders you've seen in your consulting work deal with that idea? How do they manage that thought?
Yeah, they're incredibly good at designing systems and processes that help buffer some of these phenomena that Gavin and I mentioned. They align their goals with the support team that they have within the organization. So again, I talk about entropy, that unnecessary use of energy. They align what they can do with what they have, what they aspire to do with what they have. They're really good at hiring amazing people that they trust, people that they have relationships with, and then delegating. And that sounds, going back to what Coach just said, that almost is a very challenging thing to give up that much control. But also, there's probably an underlying feeling of weakness if you ask people for help. But building a network and a team with around you, but whatever resources you have, helps you mitigate some of that stress, that you are able to put good people on projects and allow them to move a mission forward. And then just purposely mitigating dopamine troughs that could possibly derail the organization, and planning and almost like a periodization of how do we manage some of the ups and the downs of the year so that when difficulty hits, when challenges hit, we have pre-planned responses to setbacks. And when you do that on the macro level, it fortifies your culture, it strengthens your cohesion, your engagement, and the belonging that people feel. But on the micro level, it helps you adhere to details. It makes you further solidify interpersonal relationships and manage exhaustion and keep enthusiasm going. And I bring up energy a lot, but energy is neither created nor destroyed. It's transferred. And a lot of that transfer comes through the coach and how they manage that, either individually or systemically. It has a major influence on the way in which you feel about your job, and then subconsciously how other people feel about the organization, about you as a leader, and being as conscious and aware as you can about that, and using the art of a structural design to help possibly buffer some of that the problems that could come with being overworked or being in a high pressure environment.
Brendan, you said something fascinating then. A dopamine trough can derail the organization.
Yep.
I found that absolutely fascinating. Can I take it a bit more? What's the impact on an organization of a leader experiencing burnout?
Yeah, so you're going to have a knock-on effect. So I use the term a lot, neuroception. Neural for nervous system, ception for perception, reception. Okay, so the way that you interpret things. And these subtle cues are things that people pick up on. They're essentially vibes. And the vibes are the energy from that leader permeates. They're like a vector. Everything comes from them and it permeates throughout the organization. And it takes a long time to build trust. And unfortunately, that can be derailed very quickly, given what the myriad of issues that a high-performing organization will face. A leader can have major influences on the culture, the way that people think, the way that people connect, the way that they feel about the job that they have, their place in that organization, as well as their efficacy and their productivity. That might wane over time, as Gavin said. It's almost that version of quiet quitting, where you're not getting the utmost production out of people on the individual level or collectively on a group level. And that's stuff that people pick up on, whether they're aware of it or not. And that will influence the a product that you either put out in the field or for a big meeting or a trade show or whatever your performance arena might be.
I'm going to take this idea of trust and what organizations can do to foster that. But before I ask the specific question, I'd like to just frame it with another clip. This one comes from Barry Dancer, who led the Australian field hockey team to a gold medal. I'll just play the clip and then I'll come back to the question.
And the final comment I'd make, one of the key learnings, is that coaching, like a lot of other professions, is a caring profession. And people who take it on can be very dutiful. They feel the responsibility of looking after people. And what goes with that sometimes is some personalities that are, some of those people might be perfectionists. Some of them also might be very analytical. So when you put that mixture together, it's quite a dangerous mixture. And so I think the coaching profession, like other caring professions, and particularly the types of personalities that take on coaching, there's a potent mix there that's quite dangerous. And so that's why I think people in organisations need to be always asking the question about the development of their coaches, but also their life balance. And coaches, including myself, ironically talk to their athletes all the time about life balance and ensuring that they've got it right. And ironically, people like myself didn't adhere to that. So I really would encourage coaches and people within organisations who are responsible for the development of those people who are coaches really heed the messages that are out there now.
It's a great quote, and Barry Dancer works with the Australian Institute of Sport, developing many of the young Olympic coaches we have here. So he's actively involved in sharing that advice and inspiration, and I guess insight he has to the next generation coming through. But I'm interested to start with both of you. You both work with organisations in this space. I'd like to know what more could be done by the organisation itself to be more proactive when it comes to managing the threat of burnout for people that are leading.
Yeah, it comes with setting precedent with taking care of people and allowing them to integrate things from their life, whether it be self-care, whether it be health and wellness, whether it be support, whether it be having times for catharsis. That allows people within the membership to add to the energy as well as extract from the energy of the organization. And I think you find when coaches are heard from upper administration as well as the players, when there's alignment within the organization, that they build in these opportunities for a recalibration to happen. Sometimes within the ups and downs of either a sporting organization or a company, sometimes we lose sight of who we are in that pursuit of excellence, and really devising core values, devising strong identities, reaffirming yourself of who you are helps buffer some of that, some of the difficulties that comes with chasing greatness. And I do this a lot with leaders, and I do this a lot with coaches and individual players, where we really map out who they are, what they want to be, and how that aligns with their goals, their aspirations, their purpose, their passions. And we use that as a heuristic, meaning like a mental shortcut, as a way to buffer some of that, some of the stressors that might derail people or move them off of their target or act out of character from what they desire to be, how they desire to interact with others, as well as their profession or their sport.
Have you ever been stuck on a weight loss plateau, trying everything and anything you can to lose that extra weight and reach peak health? We've all been there, but Noom's unlocked the secret to reaching the mountaintop. Go in micro. The Noom GLP-1 microdose program starts at $99 and is delivered to your door in 7 days. Start your microdose GLP-1 journey today at Noom.com. That's Noom.com. Noom. Micro changes, big results. Noom GLP-1 RX program involves healthy diet, exercise, and support. Individual results may vary. Meds and personalization based on clinical need. Not reviewed by FDA for safety, efficacy, or quality. No affiliation with Novo Nordisk, Inc., the only U.S. source of FDA-approved semaglutide. Not available in all 50 U.S. states.
Here's how to stay alive longer so you can enjoy Boost Mobile's unlimited plan with a price that never goes up. Do not mistake a wasp nest for a piñata. Stay alive and switch now at Boost Mobile. After 30 gigs, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Mobile Unlimited plan.
And Gavin, from your perspective, what are organisations doing? What I heard Brenda describe there sounds like leadership development. Is there anything that you would add to the description that he gave?
Yeah, I think in what Barry was talking about in terms of giving people and encouraging people to have life balance, actually the balance is not rocket science. That people need, as well as accepting that they're going to do challenging work and they're going to work hard, they need enough time out of work that they can physically recover, that they can look after health and fitness, that they can connect socially. And if you have those three things in addition to the work time, you've already got fairly good balance. What organizations need to do, and what good organizations do, is they allow people to do that. And they create environments where, goals are challenging, but they're achievable. So people know if they organize well, if they work efficiently, they can achieve what's being asked of them without being there for so long every day that their physical, mental, and social health starts to drop off, or they stop paying attention to it. So it's, in a way, it's creating the environment where looking after oneself is part of the work. It's normalized. And it's creating that environment where people do and will work hard in the service of challenging goals, but with the space to balance as well.
I think this is so true. And my day job is as a CEO, and I know that the road to get there, my early 50s, was a long one. And along the way, I made many mistakes. I worked too hard, was obsessed in other areas, but luckily enough came across some good leaders that brought that into the organisation that I was in. When I listen to great coaches speak, I do hear obsession in the way that they describe things, but I also think they might have lost. Many of them didn't have the apprenticeship where they learnt those skills. I think they get thrust into the job quite early and they lose that learning space. And potentially they don't necessarily have a great role model above them because they are, of course, pursuing winning, or they're worried they're going to get sacked. But I think there is something in this space around obsession and how that obsession can really fuel that pursuit of chasing that extra 1% of knowledge can fuel a really imbalanced organisation. But I could be wrong. Brendan Meany, what do you think when you hear me describe that?
Ironically, I feel that in my own life, right? Some of the things we're talking about prioritizing, if you would have talked to me when I was 25, I didn't do that, right? And I think a lot of the coaches who are starting to bring this up are in their 50s, or they're almost at the back end of their career. And this grind that they've had for so long has gotten them to a great place, but they also realize that it's unsustainable. And what the energy that they had when they were younger, they realize that wanes significantly as you get older. And I think we're all kind of waking up to the importance of recovery and the importance of work-life balance that 20, 30 years ago was ignored and neglected. And even from the performance end of athletes, you had a big growth in strength and conditioning in the 70s and the 80s, and then you had speed work, late 80s, early 90s, and then you had psychological performance come in. I really think the next frontier of performance, and people are doing it already, but really optimizing recovery. And I think the way in which sport has evolved and the margins from the athlete perspective or coaching perspective, from an organizational perspective, are so thin that this reprioritization of recovery is becoming the next frontier, and that next 1% that I think if organizations are able to leverage, they're able to find a fourth, fifth gear later into the year. And like I said, unfortunately, as we age, that becomes a lot more useful and front of mind. So I think people like you who are leaders, people who, like Gavin, who've seen people from a myriad of backgrounds and in all these different situations, making sure that they have a moment and they think, how am I helping my people? How am I helping them recover? Am I optimizing my performance as well as theirs? And then how do I collaboratively work with the resources we have to implement a system that not only allows people to recover and be their best for the duration of a long season, but also have say in how that program plays out and how that is prioritized within the group that we're trying to lead.
Paul, I'm just thinking back to how you talked about yourself in the early days as well, Paul. There's this model in psychology. It's not mine. We'll maybe find a quote or a book for the links. It's a difference between a harmonious passion and obsessive passion. And in that model, harmonious passion is deep care. It's real desire to achieve whatever that achievement is that somebody's working towards, but in a way that fits with what else they need in their life. That might still mean making some sacrifices, but the difference is when passion becomes obsessive, it takes over life. So that's the coach that will not leave the office because they're still reviewing video footage at 3:00 in the morning, even though they're not having any clear or coherent thoughts about what that might do to the team's tactics the next day. That's the CEO that insists on looking at the detail of every single board presentation, even though they've got good people around them that can produce that detail, that they can then make strategic decisions about. And I think if leaders are able to get that balance right, so we want leaders to be passionate, whether they're CEOs or they're sports coaches. We want them to care. We want them to push for high standards, but we don't want to do it in a way that takes over their whole life and the lives of everyone else around them.
Listening to you both go through this topic, I've scribbled down so many thoughts and things about what people could do tomorrow. Some of them are sound harder than they are to implement, but nevertheless, here's a list of some of the advice you've given. Get great staff and empower them. Optimize recovery, has come up multiple times, and put a system in place for that recovery. Find mentors to help you reframe your thinking. Form a leadership identity that has some guardrails around what you will and won't do. Have routines to build energy, not just optimize recovery. And actually, I'm going to add one more after listening to you then, Gavin, which is moderate that need for control. Now, some of these are harder than others. As I read off that list, is there anything that you would add that people could scribble down right now and something that they could start practicing tomorrow?
The thing I would add is to really step back and observe the way that you behave when you feel under high stress, and think about the effect that has on other people around you and what some of the unexpected effects that might have on yourself. So it's not an easy thing to do, but it is taking that moment to recognize when the heat's really on and how do I act when the heat's on.
And just adding to that, I think self-forgiveness is really important in here too. If you're carrying grudges hurt you way more than they hurt other people, right? If you carry a grudge against yourself, it's a lot of burden to carry around. And I think showing up, every moment is really important, right? But it's just a moment. And I think having that reflective piece that we talked about, the awareness, understanding of how you're communicating with people and the actions and the vibes, that perception that you're giving off, but also checking your ego at the door. If you have a bad day, make sure you make it right with that person. And having that self-forgiveness that you can let go of how you acted so that you can then re-engage that member or that athlete or whoever, a support staff, so you can move forward in the best way. And I think the stress that some people are under, it makes it very difficult to do that. And just pulling up and in that moment where you're like, I made a mistake, that isn't who I am. I realize that, I recognize it. How do we move forward?
I was just thinking, Brendan, and it goes back to the last quote as well from Barry, that when, if thinking just about a coach, if the players know that you care about the outcomes for the team and about them, then that forgiveness going both ways is easier.
Business is booming, but you know what really helped? Xero, the accounting platform for small businesses. I used to think spreadsheets were just part of it. Ugh. But real-time cash flow? Wow. Invoices that chase themselves? Even better. Books that automate? That's a big one. And I can keep track from my phone while I get the job done. No spreadsheet in sight. What a life. Do right by yourself and your business and search Xero for your free trial. Conditions apply.
Traffic may be locked, but savings isn't. Unlock the savings at Boost Mobile with unlimited wireless for just $25 a month. Forever. No contracts, no hikes, and you keep your phone. Unlock the savings at boostmobile.com/unlock. $25 forever requires customers to remain active on Boost Unlimited wireless plan. For full offer details, visit boostmobile.com.
Yeah, you'd be surprised when you have this alignment, when you have many voices, when you have people who are bought in physically, emotionally, energetically. Now there's a buffer. You're starting to build this galvanized, cohesive team. I talked about it being a very tightly woven fabric. If you have only a couple of strings, a bowling ball goes through, it's going to break the strings. If you drop a bowling ball in a really nice hammock, it's going to hold it up. And I view teams in that way. And when you do have this interconnected group, it's at a foundational safety level. You know, Gavin mentioned psychological, physiological safety earlier. You're able to buffer and mitigate a lot of the challenges that come away of a high-performing organization. And there is that forgiveness. Hey, I made a bad call on 4th and 1, or I probably should have pulled that picture in me 9th inning, or why did we switch to man-to-man in the 4th quarter? I made a mistake. Players and the people around you, you'll find when you do have that established trust and you do have that safety that you've worked very hard to build, you realize that you're able to buffer a lot of the challenges that are thrown away on an organization. And a lot of people absorb the challenge and the stress opposed to just one person.
I think that image of a tightly woven fabric is a great place for us to finish. So, gentlemen, I know you both have a lot of passion for this space. You both work in this space with organisations and individuals. I'll put the details on how people can reach you in the show notes. And I thank you very much for your time today. It's a fascinating discussion, and you've left everybody with a list of things that they can start doing immediately to try and buffer against this idea of burnout. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you too, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
Hi everyone, Paul here. I hope you enjoyed our discussion on burnout. and walked away with a couple of ideas that you can bring back to your own team, your own dinner table, your own work table for discussion. When I was listening back doing the edit, there was a couple of things that jumped out at me. The first was the interesting idea of being aware of the unnecessary use of your energy as a leader and trying to mitigate times when that could be compromised, because the reality is that your energy is transferred across the group. The balance of strain and recovery that needs to be present for you as a leader if you are to continue to grow. And being present all the time will lead to energy dips and eventual burnout. And how the overuse of energy in the pursuit of winning and setting the cultural tone of the team can leave you drained unless you find ways to re-energise through daily actions that you track and prioritise. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. On Burnout was our 66th leadership lesson we've put together using insights from the great coaches we've interviewed. If you enjoyed it, then we have a deep back catalogue of episodes for you to enjoy. In particular, you might like the episodes on energy or motivation. And just before we go, if you have any feedback, then please let us know. Just like at Robbie Schultz 78, who after listening to our Bill Snyder episode said, 86 years old and still going strong. K-State will forever be indebted to Bill Snyder for all he did. Thanks, Robbie Schultz. We love the interaction with the people around the world who listen. And so if you have any feedback or comments, please let us know. In fact, if we could ask anything of you, it would be to forward this episode onto one person in your network who's interested in developing their own leadership skills. This will help us expand our reach and hopefully find more great coaches to interview. If you'd like to contact us, all the details are in the show notes or on our website, thegreatcoachespodcast.com.
Traffic may be locked, but savings isn't. Unlock the savings at Boost Mobile with unlimited wireless for just $25 a month forever. No contracts, no hikes, and you keep your phone. Unlock the savings at boostmobile.com/unlock. $25 forever requires customers to remain active on Boost Unlimited wireless plan. For full offer details, visit boostmobile.com.
Sierra has all the best active and outdoor brands you need. From athletic stuff, like a full court pickup game, swish, to athlete-ish stuff, like a half-mile stroll. Get those steps in. And for morning hikes up the mountain trail, good pace. To nighttime ghost stories from the camping chair. What a twist. Whatever level of active, Sierra loves it all. Head to Sierra or Sierra.com for the brands you want at the prices that let you do it all. From athletic to athlete-ish, Sierra's got it.